Shock poll reveals Labour Heartlands falling to Reform UK, a major blow to Starmer's leadership. The British political landscape is undergoing a seismic shift, as new polling data suggests Reform UK is making unprecedented gains in traditional Labour heartlands. This surprising development is raising alarm bells for Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer, as the party faces a potential collapse in its long-held strongholds. Reform UK's rise not only challenges Labour's dominance in these regions, but also signals broader political realignments that could reshape British politics for years to come. The polling data, a game-changer. For the first time in history, Reform UK has outpaced Labour in a national opinion poll, securing 24% of public support compared to Labour's 23%. This places Reform UK within striking distance of the ruling Conservatives, who remain the largest party with 26% of the vote. While these figures reflect a highly fragmented political environment, they underscore the rapid ascent of Reform UK, a party that has transitioned from its origins as the Brexit party to a formidable force in mainstream British politics. This polling milestone is no anomaly. Over the past year, Reform UK has steadily gained traction, particularly among voters dissatisfied with the policies of both Labour and the Conservatives. The party's focus on immigration control, economic reform, and a nationalist agenda has resonated with a broad swath of the electorate, including disillusioned working-class voters who once formed the backbone of Labour's support. The decline of Labour's Red Wall seats, traditional strongholds in the north of England, the Midlands, and parts of Wales, have been under threat since the 2019 general election, when many of these constituencies swung to the Conservatives under Boris Johnson's leadership. Now, Reform UK appears poised to capitalise on this trend, further eroding Labour's presence in these critical regions. The vulnerability of these areas is no secret. Many Red Wall voters feel abandoned by Labour, which they perceive as increasingly aligned with metropolitan elites rather than the working-class communities it historically represented. Issues such as immigration, economic inequality, and cultural identity have become flashpoints, with many voters feeling that Labour has failed to address their concerns effectively. While specific seats at risk have not been disclosed in the latest polls, political analysts point to constituencies like Hartlepool, Stoke-on-Trent, and Blackpool as potential battlegrounds. Reform UK's recent success in winning a council seat from Labour in Blackpool's Martin ward underscores the party's growing foothold in these areas. The appeal of Reform UK's rise, can be attributed to several factors, chief among them the leadership of Nigel Farage. Known for his charisma and ability to connect with ordinary voters, Farage has positioned Reform UK as a party that speaks directly to the concerns of the electorate. His focus on issues like sovereignty, border control, and economic reform has struck a chord with voters who feel ignored by the mainstream parties. Moreover, Reform UK has successfully tapped into a broader sense of frustration with the political establishment. The party's rhetoric emphasizes common-sense politics and a return to traditional British values, themes that resonate with voters across the political spectrum. By addressing concerns about immigration, housing shortages, and the cost of living, Reform UK has managed to attract both disillusioned Conservatives and disaffected Labour voters. The broader political implications: the rise of Reform UK is part of a larger trend toward political fragmentation in the UK. The dominance of the two main parties, Labour and the Conservatives, has been steadily eroding, with smaller parties like Reform UK, the Liberal Democrats, and the Green Party gaining ground. This fragmentation. In the 2024 general election, Reform UK secured 5 parliamentary seats, all of which were previously held by Conservatives. More importantly, the party placed second in 98 constituencies, including many in Labour's traditional heartlands. This performance highlights Reform UK's potential to disrupt the political balance in future elections. The implications for Labour are profound. If Reform UK continues to gain support in Labour's heartlands, it could split the vote, making it easier for the Conservatives to retain power. Alternatively, Reform UK could emerge as a kingmaker in a hung parliament, forcing Labour or the Conservatives to negotiate with a party that represents a radically different vision for the country. Challenges for Keir Starmer. For Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer, the rise of Reform UK presents a serious challenge to his strategy of rebuilding the party's credibility. While Starmer has focused on positioning Labour as a competent and moderate alternative to the Conservatives, this approach has not resonated with many of the party's traditional supporters. Critics argue that Labour has become disconnected from its working-class roots, prioritizing issues like climate change and social justice over bread-and-butter concerns like jobs, housing, and public services. To regain the trust of its traditional voters, Labour will need to adopt a more robust stance on issues like immigration and economic inequality, while also addressing the cultural concerns that have driven many voters toward Reform UK. Starmer's leadership will be tested in the coming months as Labour seeks to counter Reform UK's rise. This will require not only policy changes, but also a more effective messaging strategy to reconnect with voters who feel alienated from the party. Reform UK's future prospects. While Reform UK's recent gains are impressive, the party faces significant challenges in translating its polling success into electoral victories. The UK's first past the post. For smaller parties to win seats, even with substantial public support. To achieve long-term success, Reform UK will need to consolidate its base and build a broader coalition of support. Additionally, the party will need to demonstrate its ability to govern effectively, particularly as it gains control of more local councils and parliamentary seats. Critics have questioned whether Reform UK has the policy depth and organisational capacity to sustain its current momentum, but the party's recent successes suggest it is well positioned to continue its upward trajectory. The shock poll highlighting Labour's vulnerability to Reform UK is a stark reminder of the challenges facing Britain's political establishment. As Reform UK continues to gain ground, both Labour and the Conservatives will need to adapt to a rapidly changing political landscape. For Labour, the immediate task is clear: reconnect with its traditional heartlands and address the concerns of voters who feel left behind. Failure to do so could result in further losses and a long-term realignment of British politics. Reform UK's rise is not just a passing trend but a reflection of deeper societal divisions and a growing demand for change. Whether this demand translates into lasting political success for Reform UK remains to be seen, but one thing is certain: the era of predictable two-party dominance in British politics is coming to an end.